from Noah and West Sac. Teddy, KGB from the movie Rounders. Pay this man. Pay this man his money. Okay?
I've seen that movie.
I've seen this story before. I've seen this movie before. Hopefully it's a different movie. Hopefully it has a different ending. Okay, Chris, let's get to the current head coaches and what they're making. This is from Brendan Nunez. All right. And you can do this math if you have a calculator. You can follow along as well. Greg Popovich, 5 years.
Let me get my calculator ready so I can just tell the people for them. You know, some might be driving, so I don't want to, encourage people to.
Okay. Yeah, of course not. Of
pull
course
out
not.
the calculator.
Okay, let's start here.
Okay.
Some of these we can do off the top of our head. Come on, let's.
I won't tell you which ones are off the top of our head and which aren't. So
I don't
want to embarrass.
All right, first one.
Yep.
Greg Popovich.
Yep.
Again, Mike Brown was offered $8 million a year, up to $9 million, based on bonuses that we assume are based on success in the playoffs. How far in the playoffs they have to go? Not sure. Greg Popovich, 5 years, $80 million. Now, again, that's Greg Popovich.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to read it all. That's 16 mil per.
16 mil a year.
Yep.
Greg Popovich.
Yep.
Now,
legacy,
because that team is a dumpster fire, but they do have Wemby, and they're going to make some moves, and they're paying him to get Wemby where they think Wemby should be.
They have all that churro money too to pay him. So
that's right.
That's Charles.
That's right.
That's right.
Steve Kerr, and is this newer? The Steve
I believe
Kerr?
so. Yeah, I think he just got it after our boy Monty Williams reset the market for everything.
Steve Kerr, 2 years, $35 million. That is $17.5 million a year to get yelled at by people on Twitter.
Yeah. Shout out Jim
Steve
Park.
Kerr. Shout out to Golden Spaces.
They cannot stand that man. It's crazy.
Eric Spoelstra, 8 years, $120 million. That's $15 million a year. $15 million a year. Ty Lue, we have some sound from Shams on that as well. Ty Lue, 5 years. This is very recent. 5 years, $70 million. That's $14 million a year. Monty Williams, we know that is the Rudy Gobert.
Yes, it ruined everything. It's the reason why everyone's getting paid.
Exactly. Monty Williams to lose on the Pistons, $13 million a year, 6 years, $78.5 million.
Oof.
Budenholzer, fresh off a firing, really.
Yep.
And he's coming back into the fold. He is going to save the Phoenix Suns. Budenholzer, 5 years, $50 million. That's $10 million a year. And last but not least, you call him when you don't have anyone else to call. If you feel like making a conference finals, maybe. If you want to underachieve, call this man, Doc Rivers, 4 years, $40 million. That's $10 million a year. Mike Brown is hoping for $10 million a year. He was offered $8 million a year, which can go up to $9 million a year. Chris thinks if they win the whole thing,
I'm pretty sure
you got to go pretty deep, right? It is past the first round as well. So at best, he can make $9 million, let's assume, to get to the conference final. Let's just put it there. Sure. So those are some of the numbers. Do you feel 916?
Also, I want to add, I believe all of those other numbers are guaranteed. Those are the guaranteed numbers.
Guaranteed.
I believe.
916-339-1140. The numbers that we just read off. Okay, Popovich, $16 million a year. Kerr, $17.5 million a year. Spoelstra, $15 million a year. Ty Lue, $14 million a year. Monty Williams, $13 million a year. Budenholzer, $10 million a year. Doc Rivers, $10 million a year. Does it feel like Mike should be in that Doc Rivers, Mike Budenholzer category? Mm-hmm. Does it feel like that? Is he a step below? Is he a step above? Should he be making more than Monty Williams? Really? $8 million a year? And the $9 million a year, if I'm Mike Brown, I'm thinking, well, that's not based on me. What's Monty gonna put on this team?
Yeah.
What's Monty gonna put on this team? The incentives that are in, let's assume Western Conference Finals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those should be connected to what, and it would never happen like this, but you don't know what this roster is going to be.
Right.
So right now, let's say nothing changes. Let's say I have to eat the Carolina Reaper, right? Let's say let's say they keep Malik Monk, but nothing else changes, which we'll hear about from Nate at 12:30. Nothing else changes, right? Is this a Western Conference Final roster?
No, not right now.
So you have incentives that are essentially not attainable. We are assuming Western Conference Finals for the incentives. We do not know that, but we're pretty sure it ain't first round. Okay, because if you're not willing to pay this man $10 million, why would you say you can get $9 million if you make it past first round?
Right.
Maybe it's second round. We don't know. And by the way, there's also talk. We're going to see if we get Sean Cunningham on today. If not, we're in constant contact with him, who dropped some gems yesterday as well. Because if you look at Jason Kidd and how the sources are telling Sean that the deal is comparable to Jason Kidd, but we don't know what the Jason Kidd deal is.
Can I give some context here as well?
Yes, sir.
So this is from USA Today in an article where they pretty much are outlining the coaching contracts. They're more so comparing the NCAA coaches' contracts to the NBA coaches, but they group a lot of the coaches together, and it's just interesting to see currently the category in which Mike Brown is grouped in versus the category that he's going to try and ascend to.
Okay.
Currently, it says this is, of course, written before the season's over, so it has Frank Vogel in here, or might have even been a couple years ago. No, it would have been last season. So it says Phoenix is Frank Vogel, Chicago's Billy Donovan, New York's Tom Thibodeau, Charlotte's Steve Clifford, Orlando's Jamal Mosley, Portland's Chauncey Billups, and Sacramento's Mike Brown are among coaches in the $4 to $6 million annual range. In the NBA, let's see here, Los Angeles Clippers Ty Lue is not at the 10 million mark. Again, this is before his extension reached next. The other coaches in such a category are Rick Carlisle in Indiana, Philadelphia's Nick Nurse, who his coaching contract is public. He's making $8 million. He signed a 4-year, $32 million contract, which equals $8 million per year.
You said Nick Nurse?
Nick Nurse.
In Philly.
In Philly. And he just signed that earlier this season. Dallas's Jason Kidd, Atlanta's Quinn Snyder, and Houston's Ime Udoka are in the range of $7 to $8 million per year.
So I know you said this article is a little older,
yes,
right?
Let me see when this was written just for timestamp purposes. This was on March 13th. So This is a month and some change.
I'm just trying to figure out how many of those contracts, or where were these weren't all extensions though. Some of these were initial contracts.
Some of these were initial contracts, but some of these were extensions. But yeah, some of these are initial contracts. But I think it's more important to just note the caliber of coaches that you think Mike Brown's in. And if we're talking about him getting in that Jason Kidd territory, I feel like Mike Brown, because the one thing I will say about the initial list of coaches that we listed out, Popovich, Kerr, Spoelstra, Lue, you can throw Monty Williams in there. I can make him work. Budenholzer, Doc Rivers, all those guys have won championships or have at least been to the NBA Finals. Monty Williams went to the finals as the coach of the Spurs. So I think there is a little bit of an extra bump. There's an extra. Now you could argue Nick Nurse is also a finals winning coach and he makes $8 million per year. But I just think that's almost why there might be, if you're going to look at it from the Kings side, it's, hey, well, all of those guys are championship level coaches. Frankly, those are the guys that we want to replace you with. That's when we're going to pay the 10 mil. We think you're more so. And you could argue, I don't know if necessarily, especially looking at the list, I don't know if it's disrespectful to say Mike Brown is in the category of Rick Carlisle, Nick Nurse, Jason Kidd, who's now in the finals, Quinn Snyder, who's taken teams, those Utah Jazz teams, to a lot of success. Ime Udoka is one of the hottest young names in coaching, and we know why he ended up leaving that situation in Boston. But, looking at that grouping of guys, I think 7 to 8 mil is but to your point of, are those initial contracts or extensions, I think he's in more so in that tier than in that top tier. But also, to then take it back to Mike Brown's side, yesterday's prices are not today's prices. If those guys are in 7 and 8 mil now, to your point, when they do get a re-up in contract extension, Mike Brown needs to make sure, just like the quarterback situation, yeah, I might be making more than all of those guys in this tier right now, but in 2-3 years, you think Rick Carlisle, after the season he had, is not going to get an extension and make more money? You think Jason Kidd just signed,
he just got his.
But he might have messed up and signed too early, right? He signed right before the OKC series. If he would have just let that thing go a couple more weeks or through the offseason, you put your team in the NBA Finals. And that's the risk that the Kings do run here as well with not bringing back by not extending Mike Brown. Okay, let's say negotiations don't get get completed this offseason. Well, what if the Kings are great next year? What if the Kings win 50 games next year and they do win a first round series? Mike Brown probably won't be asking for 10. Again, he's going to say, that was what I was asking for last offseason when we missed the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now we won 50 games and I plan on being in the second, third round next year.
If he wins, if they ball out, Mike Brown's gone. If they ball out,
you run that risk
next season, based on what they're going through right now, Mike Brown is not coming back. As long as there is a good situation out there,
he's at least going to explore the market.
He already feels disrespected.
Yeah.
By the way,
agent at that point.
By the way, Chris, you were right. Your boy Whitey Gleason is correcting me on the 7. It's even worse. Like you said, it is $7 million a year if it starting for the 21 million with the opportunity to go up to 9 million. So it ain't even 8 million. It's 7 million a year initially. So lower that notch even more with the opportunity to get to 9 million. If now, Chris, now that it is actually 2 million difference, to your point, it's Western Conference Finals or Finals. That's what this is contingent upon to get to that 9 million. And you make some good points. I don't think Chris is out here flipping because we respect Mike Brown, but we got to be honest when we have some of these numbers. Now, another thing I would say is when you look around those names that you said, what is one thing that they all have in common as well? We'll discuss what that is when we return. Stiles and Watkins, Sactown Sports.
What's the missing piece